And we're now officially live. Hello to another episode of Lore Ramblings from the Dice Scum crew. This is Adam.
Greg is here.
And I'm Techpriest, and today we were a little delayed by current events we do not want to talk about.
Something Taliban. Oh no, I shouldn't have said that.
Something. Let's move on.
Yeah, let's just move on.
Yeah.
It's a bad idea to stick around.
And let's move on to a painful forcing of a rhyme with R.
Alliterations. Requiem for Regina, which is just Onyx Path desperately trying to figure out a fancy way to insert Requiem with a synonym for Queen.
Yep.
So we've had Victorian era vampires.
We've had Victorian era. We've had Roman era. We've had that's about actually it here. This is actually the first vampire section I think in this book.
Let me double check. I'll just check out.
Yeah,
the
it looks like
bookmarks.
it is.
So, Sundered World was mage and werewolf. To the Strongest was primarily mage. Three Kingdoms of Darkness was the Scooby Doo's. For some reason, I'm actually forgetting what Soul Eaters were for a second. And Changeling. Wolf and Raven was werewolves and also
Sin Eaters.
Sin Eaters. After the Fall was Demon, and beneath it. Yeah, this is the first vampire. That's interesting. I'm surprised they didn't introduce them a little earlier.
Well, of the major splats, vampire is the one that's gotten the most historical attention overall over the decades.
And that's fair enough.
You've got Vampire Dark Ages. Yeah, you've got Vampire Dark Ages. You've got Vampire Victorian. You got the Requiem for Rome. You got some other vampire historical stuff. I'm pretty sure that I just cannot remember off the top of my head right now.
Just note that the first two that he listed, Dark Ages and Victorian, and the Victorian Gaslight setting, were for World of Darkness, not Chronicles. Although you can just port them over. Just remember that successes are 8 in Chronicles.
Yeah,
and ones don't take away successes, and you'll be fine.
Yeah, or just take the setting advice from it, because there's still a lot of very useful stuff for running a game in those time periods.
Yeah, and Requiem for Regina takes place right at the, not right at the end, but in the last decade of good Queen Bess's reign. The last of the Tudors.
Where people were still being murdered with swords, honorably, and not with pistols honorably.
Yep, London
pistols
is sprawling.
Would come.
The new buildings are being rapidly built up. Filth is bad because this is during the time when London had repeated bouts of bubonic plague.
Yeah, this is one of the fun times for if you wanted to live in London. It's still an important city. It's still
at this point, it's rapidly one of the most important cities in Europe still.
Yeah, it's where the Queen prefers to keep her court of all fucking places.
Which is a bit of a surprise. Usually they took court elsewhere and these before her.
Yeah, admittedly, this is also where Parliament is, of course.
And this is also the period of time that I'm vaguely aware of, but I usually focus on her much more interesting and man-child-esque father, Henry VIII. Because Elizabeth's dad was very, very interestingly insane.
Very interesting man, honestly. Kind of...
This is the man who would wear festive colors at a funeral.
Mm-hmm.
I'm not even kidding. I think he did that once.
Yes.
Also, we got to talk about the rise of the middle bourgeoisie.
Oh yeah, this was
that was already happening before.
It was happening, but
yeah,
this is when it was accelerating.
It got bigger.
Oh, actually, since this is 1587, this is right before Felipe is about to send his entire armada up here to kick her in the teeth. If you're wondering, Felipe of Spain, staunch Catholic. Good Old Bess founded the true Anglican Church because really it was her and her half-brother who died really young, Edward VI, who did that. Henry just did it to say screw the Pope.
Yeah,
So
and
this
there
is
were
when
a lot of
Anglican doctrine was really hammered home.
And you got to remember that a lot of England kind of wanted to get away from the church on top of all that, so it just kind of fit.
Well, yeah. By that point, you had the insanity that was Mary.
Mm-hmm.
That burned a lot of goodwill that any of the Protestants would have had on England. You know, the sad thing was I did not intend for that to be a pun.
But it did. But it did.
Yeah. But in any case, this
Yeah, this is during the ass end of Elizabeth's reign, who managed to run a fairly tight and good ship, mainly by playing other powers in the kingdom and outside.
Yeah.
This is actually well past her into her spinsterhood, because that was a big threat during her portion of the reigns, inheritance rights being an issue. She squared the circle by just saying screw it, and I think she held off on putting an heir until eventually she reluctantly picked the Stuarts of Scotland, because they were related. Stuarts of Scotland were intermarried into the Tudors at points.
Every European monarch was related in some
True.
way.
But closer than usual. The Stuarts would have their own fun time.
Scotland stability. Stable Scotland is are two words that don't mix together at this point.
They actually mentioned her favorite lover, Robert Dudley. That was if she could marry who she wanted, she would have definitely picked him. Could not.
Yeah.
Oh, also, this place, London is increasingly becoming a police state.
Which makes sense because there have been several attempts on her life. I'm very terrible. I don't remember when the gunpowder plot actually happened.
That's two kings. That's like a king away.
That was James. That had the gunpowder plot.
It's right. There is that still tensions though with the Catholic minority.
Oh yeah. There were some attempted rebellions from some dukes. There were some attempted ducal rebellions.
So there's a reason why there's a developed police state. As for vampires, they're also feeling the change, and this is the thing about vampire in this time period. There's no Carthian movement. There's 5 major covenants in New World Vampire, and one of them's not appearing in this one. They're not founded until Revolutionary France or so. But yeah, the changes in London changes vampire societies because in a lot of cases, vampires are the parasites that suckle upon the throat of the mortal world. So what changes there changes them here.
And in particular, one of the factions that's really had to grapple with change is Lanctia Sanctum, the fundamentalist Christian vampires.
To describe Lanctia Sanctum, the best way to describe them is there's a million ways to make them, but a very common one is that you might as well treat them as if they were a Catholic order, or just a generally Christian order. And in England, they have to change their ways because you can't really lean on. You have to change your ways, or in this case, new inductees have a different opinion on faith. Your new child heir will have different opinions than the elders. And they actually mentioned the Camarilla because the Camarilla does exist in Requiem. They died out. They died out with Rome. And Invictus is in the middle of a civil war over whether or not to resurrect the Camarilla.
Mm-hmm. Oh, also, let's not forget this is while the Middle Ages have passed, you could still be hanged and burned at the stake for witchcraft in this time.
I wonder how Lanctia Sanctum plays with Anglicanism. Pretty well. Anglicanism is very similar to. It has Anglicanism in general is the most Catholic of all the Protestant strains.
Cue the fervent, the one fervent Anglican that may have listened to this podcast is going off on a rant about how they're not dirty papists.
Tell that to the high churchers, dude.
The one devout fanatical Anglican on the fucking planet is listening to us right now, I bet.
Probably.
Just seething. Seething about what we're going to get wrong.
Oh God, yes. And
in
if you're wondering,
case,
the Wei Han Sin are the Order of the Crone.
Yeah, they're the Circle of the Crone in this case, because as the Circle of the Crone is just a generic name for them. It's really any blood-focused cult, often revolving around a mother deity or cycles of reincarnation and things like that.
So let's just kind of move on, because there's really not much to say about. I mean, there's a lot to say about Elizabethan England, but I'll be honest, it's not one of my great passions. So yeah, the theme of this one is schisming.
Oh, and specifically also with theme, someone is watching.
Yeah.
Yeah. This is an era of paranoia within London and within the society itself. There are secret papists about. There are spies and plots and treachery and all that sort of fun stuff that vampires love to sink their fangs into.
England is really feeling the fact that they're an island at the moment.
Yep,
oh,
because
yes,
they have no allies on the continent anymore.
Right, when we talk about, they have the Dutch.
They don't have the Dutch, really.
The Dutch, not at this point yet.
Yeah, they're interfering with them, but that's about it.
No, not at this point yet, because I don't. This is right around the time they were still fighting for their independence.
Yeah, I know. I'm saying England was helping them out at the time.
There's no French because of the Valois king and now the Bourbons, and the Habsburgs. Oh please. At one point, yes, England and the Habsburgs got along fairly well. That died when Henry banished Catherine of Aragon.
Yep. Probably
and Philip is still seething that this, what he sees as a bastard in the royal term, sits on the throne, and he seeks to, and he, like, literally a year from now, he's going to send an entire armada to send his specific claimant onto there, or to have the Catholics uprise. So yeah, there's a big paranoia element. This is a year from the Spanish Armada.
And hilariously, what's about to come is actually a description of what the vampires have been doing the last 1,000 years, which even go over a portion we've gone over, the Viking period that we briefly nixed over back in I forget what it's called.
So this just gives you insight on how vampires evolved. In particular, the oldest of the societies was the Wei Han Sin, or the Circle of Crone.
Yeah.
Then it would be the Invictus, mainly because they're from the elements and surviving wreckage of the Camarilla.
Yeah. Now, it's also important to note that that this is sort of a weird era also, in that this is the first time we actually get a look at a covenant that's mentioned in 2nd edition.
Oh. I just also realized something. Sorry, just briefly. I also just realized something, because it's something we haven't brought up. Notice that there's another faction that's missing here. Order Dracul.
Yes, they are not around yet here. because they just haven't gotten here yet. The Ordo isn't really found.
The Ordo's around. It's not in England yet.
London. Yeah, as I mentioned, it's not here yet. It's cooking around down probably around Constantinople, and it's a few people. It's not a lot of people, and it really only kicks off in the 1800s.
Yeah, because Dracula has founded his order.
Yeah, just figured I'd do that for posterity's sake.
It's worth mentioning. So the next thing to note is that London is not exactly great to live in this time period.
Yep, they just go into details about the High Medieval period. This is where Lengthy Ex Sanctum kind of comes into play.
Yeah.
They first started when the Christianization of the Saxons came around, and they reinforced during Danelaw.
Yeah.
The aftermath of Danelaw, I should state. Then there's the War of the Roses. For those wondering, this is the fall of the House Plantagenet and the incompetence of the rules there, and two major houses related to them within it. War, and eventually the compromise is the Tudors, which that's how they came into power. Basically, they came in as a compromise candidate and were able to secure the throne.
Yeah, not exactly what I'd call like the ultimate of compromise candidates, but they definitely proved that they could work. They definitely
the
also
in the Tower.
Yes, the Tower of London. Very important tower, basically built by William the Conqueror to secure that. It's became the primary execution and imprisonment site for the royal family.
It's most definitely cursed.
Yeah, and it's
and
probably
in the world of
cursed.
and in the Chronicles of Darkness, yeah, their spirits hanging here.
Yeah. They're not very happy.
And if you're wondering, the death of the princes under Richard II, which was the Yorkist candidate, that's how the Tudors really got a lot of legitimacy, basically because of how they died, which may have been foul play.
Yeah. People really don't like kinslaying.
Even the rumor, which almost certainly is true, was enough to really sabotage him.
So yeah, then their Book of Common Prayers in the Tudors. The Tudor period is from I believe it's Henry VI to, well, Bess.
Mm-hmm.
So that would be the 6th, the 7th, the 8th, which is the most notorious of them. Then I think it was Edward VI, then Mary for a brief period, and then Elizabeth.
The poor boy, too sick for the world. The mad woman who couldn't give a child.
The mad woman who was, by the way, broken psychologically because of how her and her mother were treated.
Mm-hmm.
Yep.
And Liz.
And who just took the best of a bad situation, really. I forget how Henry VI worked, but the way I remember it is you have the miser, the man-child, the sickly, the maniac, and then, well, the lady.
Sick. Despite Henry's big thing for being the big tyrant, people sleep on his father, the actual tyrant who made it possible for his son to even do all that shit.
It was said that that Henry VII could make stones bleed gold. You gave him he basically found ways to make money out of money. He was the ultimate miser. Like he would squeeze blood out of stone. That's how cheap and how controlling he was over taxes.
I mean, after a civil war that's pretty much wrecked your country for the last 100-ish years, it's probably good to refill the treasury.
Then there's his second son, because the first one died.
Yeah.
Unexpectedly. Don't forget, for this is the real complicated shit. Marius' brother's widow, which was technically illegal in Catholic law, but everyone kind of forgot about that.
It's technically illegal because it's a holdover from rabbinical law. You can't marry a widow, your sibling's widow there either.
Yeah, it was kind of thought to be creepy.
Well, it's also seen to be cursed.
Yeah, creepy.
No, I mean actually cursed, as in you're going to be fated to have a bad end. Like the marriage won't work.
It didn't. Well, it didn't.
And it didn't in this case, mainly because Catherine kept miscarrying.
Yeah. Kind of a sad situation, honestly.
Oh, yeah, it's pretty terrible.
Yeah, and Henry was an absolute prick.
Yeah.
Yeah? Again, this is the man who I think wore festive colors when Catherine died.
I mean, there's a reason. The most famous thing about this man is the 5-finger song about him: divorced, beheaded, died,
divorced again.
Divorced again, beheaded, survived.
Yeah.
5 dead wives.
And he killed personally 2 of them.
5 ex-wives.
And he killed 2 of them.
Mm-hmm.
He also killed his mentor and greatest friend too, just casually, because he disagreed with him.
Yep.
And
that's Henry for you.
That's what Liz had to inherit.
It gets even funnier too, because I think it was like weeks after killing him. That's only when he felt remorse, in the sense that, oh darn it. That's the thing with Henry VIII. He always felt remorse after killing them. Not because he feels like a horrible person, but because, wait a minute, I really liked them.
Or wait, they were the one that did all the things I don't like doing. Oh, god damn it, why did I kill my minister?
Why did I kill you, Cardinal Wolsey? No.
I will say the two funniest things of his things that were actually unironically kind of amusing. Wife number two divorced. He literally divorced because she was too ugly.
He literally just took the nuptial, the nest egg that you get. I forget the dowry. He took the dowry and said, "Fuck off."
And sent her back to Germany. And wife number 5 had the biggest kahunas on her because she cheated on him.
Yeah, Howard was insane. Let's see. There is one more interesting fact about the time period I really like. We're just getting into this because there's not much for me to say about this. It's just getting it out of the way. One of my favorite jobs that exists in this time period, and if I ever made a Chronicles of Darkness character in this setting, they would be an ale taster. So, because the thing is, Elizabeth made a very big deal because England was the home of alcoholism in Europe. I think Russia still beats them at this time, but England, alcoholism was rampant. And what ale tasters' jobs were to assess the quality of the brew. And the primary way they did it was to actually pour the brew upon their breeches, which were made of leather, and sit on a stool. If the brew was good, they could get up without the breeches sticking. If they couldn't, that meant there was too much sugar, which means that it's likely going bad. I'm not even kidding. That's an actual test you got to do. You got to pour booze on you and sit on a chair, and if it made horrible sticking, squidging noises, you knew that the place needed to be shut down.
But moving slight bit of history to move on after the fuck up that was Henry, the magnificent fuck up of Henry VIII, king, his son, who, let's just be perfectly honest, he died too quickly for anything relevant to happen.
Well, no, there's one thing relevant that happened. The Book of Common Prayer, the assembled Protestants of all sorts, ranging from Puritans to just straight up high churchers, managed to hash out an agreement that all of them absolutely hated, which meant that it was the closest they could get to actually making a coherent doctrine for Anglicanism.
And then immediately got repealed.
Yep.
So literally, he's only known. Oh wait, no, he's not even known for that. I'm confusing it with the Scottish man.
Yeah, see,
boy.
Yeah,
the Scottish man made that Bible.
Anyway, young boy dies. Fervent Catholic takes charge, and let's just say she didn't give. What?
The purges begin.
I mean, I was also just gonna. Yeah, I was also gonna get into just the fact that war. Don't forget war with France.
Oh yeah.
Yeah.
Horrible war because Spain asked us to.
Yeah, and I'm planning on marrying into the Spanish royal family, and then
silent. Upon death, a bit of a silent coup.
Yeah.
Because the English did not want to be under the Habsburgs.
And essentially, what Elizabeth does is she looks at what her half brother and half sister both did, and went, "Well, my country's fucking shite, ain't it?" And plays a balancing act, because otherwise she will be violently executed or exiled, and she doesn't want that.
Yeah, I mean, it happened. It nearly happened a few times.
Several times.
War, civil unrest, dynastical disputes. Also not mentioned, the beginning of the English colonial empire outside of in the Americas.
Yep, because she is the one that set it along, because she went, we could use some of this gold, and some of these resources.
To fuck with the Spanish.
Yeah, also fuck Spain. That's how Roanoke was founded, and then went away.
And as well as she's the first English monarch, if I remember correctly, to issue the right to privateer.
Oh yeah.
The Caribbean, in the Caribbean specifically.
Most notorious of them was Sir Francis Drake, who actually got knighted for his piracy.
He got knighted, then he went a little too piratey and got executed for it.
Yo ho.
His last words are basically, "Come on, just fucking kill me already, you bastard!" I know it's coming.
Yo ho. Yeah.
If he challenged that, I almost envisioned the executioner just intentionally missing and making him scream and then going, whoops!
His literal last words were, strike, man, strike, because the executioner was hesitating about it.
Well, I mean, he was just doing his job too well.
Yeah.
Also, jokes aside, to pick up on the thing about the Elizabethan police state, the book actually does mention how Queen Elizabeth actually had probably one of the most complex spy networks, both international and internal, within all of whatever the fuck you want to call this period of Europe, like
early
medieval,
modern?
early modern, early Renaissance, whatever the fuck you want to call this.
Early modern, I'd say, and yeah, she needed them too.
And they were very good.
But the reason why it's called Requiem for Regina, she's getting old. She still has several years, she still has a good bit of time before her. But not only is she getting old, her advisors, which she accumulated over decades, are starting to die off.
Yeah.
With that the good governance.
Or ending up in political turmoil like Sir Francis Drake, who she quite liked, actually. It's just that he ended up almost causing a war with Spain when it wasn't convenient, and his political enemies jumped on the chance to get rid of him, and did.
Mm-hmm.
Speaking of the mix of politics and pleasure and personality, this is the era of Willem Shakespeare.
I keep forgetting that this famous play artist guy named William Shakespeare was around this time.
Yeah.
With his famous quote of "Don't waste my time."
Right.
I mean, more of his famous works will come out during the next dynasty, but this is when he's getting this is when he is far from irrelevant.
He's written quite a few of his sonnets, and a couple of his early plays have also been written at this point.
Or at the very least, he's written down plays that they were performing. Might not necessarily have been his, but certainly.
Well, yeah, Shakespeare probably stole a few of them.
Also,
30 to 40% of his
it's in the business. It's just part of the business.
Also, they mentioned that apparently his work Titus and
Titus Andronicus. Yeah.
Yeah. Apparently, is very popular among the young kindred, and by young they probably mean only a few decades to a few hundred years old.
I'll be honest. I've never actually read Titus Andronicus. What's that one about?
If I remember correctly, it's it has to do with Rome.
Well,
if the name wasn't if the name wasn't a fucking clue. Specifically, it's about Roman army fighting the Goths.
Okay. I'll be honest. That doesn't sound as good as stuff like Othello, Macbeth, and Midsummer's Night.
Oh no, the reason they liked it was because. The reason it was considered very popular was because it was very bloody and graphic for play back then, as in essentially there was people were the actors were killing, not actually killing each other, but for play violence, it was very intense at the time. Okay,
fair enough. I wouldn't really know anything about Titus Andronicus, so this has nothing
I know, just it's mentioned as the first fucking thing about
into brain cell activates here.
Mm-hmm. It's literally the first thing mentioned in what is to come.
See, I spent 3 years in a row in school learning about the glories of Romeo and Juliet. I never got to read about how Romans murdered a bunch of German people. So anyway, yeah, after good old Bessie dies, Jimmy becomes King of England. And Jimmy's a pretty good king, all said and done.
He's not his son.
Jimmy the Second eventually loses his head, figuratively and literally.
And his crown.
Oh wait, no, it was Charlie who lost his crown.
Okay, yeah. First off, let me go through this. So you have James the First,
Jimmy,
and then you have Charles the First.
Then Charlie, yeah.
Now Charles the First is the one that gets killed. This Charles II is his son, and then there's a James II.
Yeah, Charlie II manages to not fuck up, and then Jimmy II fucks up so bad they hire a Dutchman to take the crown.
Well, it's probably because he was Catholic.
Well, he straight up was, but he was also stupid enough to try to walk back some of the Protestant reforms too.
I mean,
it wasn't just that he was dumb enough. It wasn't just that he was Catholic. He was dumb enough to try to, walk it back.
Charles II was flat his deathbed confession was I was always Catholic.
Yeah, but no one cared. Like, they got annoyed with him sometimes because he was too much of a fogey about things, but
Mm-hmm.
No one ultimately cared. It was his son who screwed up by being active about that.
Also, fun things to mention about James I. James I was almost certainly either bi or homosexual.
Why do you think he supported playwrights, who back in the day you didn't have women actresses. They were boys in drag.
Yeah. He had his favorite, who he would refer to in letters as my wife, occasionally. They had a secret passage connecting their rooms in one of the castles that was discovered. And there are still people that insist he was totally not gay.
Nope. Good old Jimmy. He played Saki Karachi in his bathhouse in London.
Speaking of actors, apparently the reason that the Bard was mentioned at the first part of this was because apparently some vampire got a little too riled up by the violence on screen and murdered a lot of the play actors, where the vampires essentially had to put a thing like, no, you can't murder the actors. This is
murdering actors. It's bad for business.
Mm-hmm.
People notice.
I just wanted to reiterate that, like, people are going to notice that you murdered someone on stage, that wasn't fake blood.
Well, I mean, they might not have used fake blood. They probably used like livestock blood.
I know, but like that they realize that person is actually bleeding, like, from a wound and not,
Do you think a one humanity vampire that's watching a night play of Titus Andronicus has the brain power to think of that?
I know. No. I just want to read this. However, one came to report an incident during his patrols along the strand that nearly killed him. In his hunger, he decided to eat the cast during the final scene of Act 2, sparing only the poor boy playing Lavina from bleeding out from the stubs of his wrists. He fucking ate the entire cast of the play.
He was just starving?
Oh. That's actually really funny.
Manageable problem. Can't admit it, though. Yeah.
The Blood Queen promptly banned the death of actors on stage in future Kindred performances.
They should have. They should have had this curse be the curse of the play Macbeth, actually, not Titus Andronicus.
Well, the point is, anyway, that as King James the Sixth and First comes in and starts getting very, very defensive about the fact that he's incredibly gay and starts blaming witches on the fact that he can't get to his wife in time. I'm dead serious.
I'm telling you, the reason why I was too busy hanging out with this dude is because witches made me do it.
Why I was on my ship for so long was because
a witch
cast a storm spell to keep me in Denmark with these big burly sailors and my new wife.
I wasn't getting hit with a 32 gun broadside by those sailors.
You damn well know he was the pitcher.
Though, mind you, while this is still going on, we've got vampire politics to deal. We've also got vampire politics to deal with, including that guy who ate all those actors who's apparently important in this. I'm gonna spell out his name. I'm gonna spell like it's under War, Restoration, and Fate. The thing that we're talking about, Charles.
Oh yeah, we're gonna get through that. So okay.
In IELDRA.
Sildra? I think that's supposed to be Sildra. It's some horrible Welsh name.
Or is that like Old Saxon? I can't tell.
Aethelgifu is, but the first I'm almost certain is Welsh. So Sildra Aethelgifu I'm gonna go with. Screw you, Welsh. You sound Cthulhu enough.
How is there an S in that? There's no S in his name.
Because it's Celtic.
It's Aethelgifu. I think is how you pronounce it.
I think the first name's still Sildra, though.
Mm-hmm.
Thank you, Celtic language, for having the letter I represent the syllable S. and E represent the Y. Look, you may have built your roads out of iron, but you probably should have spent some of that metal fixing your language structure. I'm not gonna lie.
Yeah.
And I'm not saying that just because Welsh makes my eyes bleed whenever I read it. Don't worry,
But anyway,
Georgian does the same thing.
But yeah, the Blood Queen kind of fucks off. And then there's this Deva from the Ottoman Empire that comes in as after the English Civil War. But to give you an idea of the English Civil War, it gave us the best flag ever for a war of all time, which is the flag of a dog in a barrel with the caption "Come out, ye cuckold" on it.
Oh yeah, that one.
Which was a reference to, I think, if I remember correctly, a duke's very prominent marital problems. It gets a little bit weirder when you consider that the reason why it kicks off is that Charles I is possibly one of the worst rulers of all time.
To give you an idea, his first act after becoming king was disbanding Parliament and then refusing to listen to them for 20 years.
No, that's the thing. James didn't like Parliament, and he stocked Parliament with his toadies, but he at least acknowledged that they had some power. He didn't like it, but he at least acknowledged it. Charles wanted to go full Louis.
Mm-hmm. Also, he, if I remember correctly, since Parliament was the only one that could actually collect taxes, he came up with the genius plan of instead of having taxes, have the people donate to the king. And by donate, he means he's going to send people to your fucking house and tell you to donate to the cause.
Not necessarily. What he would do is he would ask for donations from the wealthy merchants in town, because that wasn't there to fund his lifestyle, which was more extravagant than James. And James was pretty extravagant.
I mean, this is the man who single-handedly funded the playwrights and built in a giant fucking theater called the Globe.
Well, James also James also was a big fan of balls and like other elaborate ceremonies.
Oh, I thought you meant the dangly bit. Sorry.
Oh no, he's also a fan of those, but as we mentioned, but like as in masquerades and things like that. Very big fan of that.
I'm not surprised.
I think he enjoyed it a lot just for the spectacle, because it was, remember, in Scotland he really didn't have a lot of money.
Scotland is miserable nightmare country.
Also at this point in history, unironically, kind of ungovernable.
Uh-huh.
To give you an idea, you could manage Stirling and the big cities like Glasgow and Edinburgh, and that's about it.
He also considered himself an extreme religious scholar, James VI, which is why he commissioned the King James Bible and wrote parts of it himself out of translations that he almost certainly got wrong and edited things.
But you don't understand, Tech. It's the ineditable word of God, according to some Baptists.
Also, it's also the only Bible some weird melanin obsessed people will listen to.
I know, it's a weird ass Bible.
The ineditable word of God, written by a very dandy king with his very dandy balls.
With his curly red hair. With his curly red hair and his cunning wit and
love of dick, like.
and so cunning, he somehow made everyone hate him, including the Scots.
Well, especially Scots, because there's nothing Scots hate more than other Scots.
Never tell a Scot that, though. You'll make an enemy for life.
Oh, yeah. The only times they'll actually get along with each other is if a non-Scottish person says that, then they band together. It's kind of like South America, only a little more interesting.
Mm-hmm. But yeah, long story short, English Civil War, and actually kind of relevant for this time period, it's also not spoken of. The English Civil War had a massive rise in witch hunter hysteria. In fact, that's actually where Witchfinder General term came from.
This is partially from King James himself. King James was absolutely fucking obsessed with witches.
Just as distract, and not just as he seemed unironically. He wrote a fucking book on them.
Yes, he did. He wrote a book on them.
There's a reason why Shakespeare, when trying to getting appeal towards him to help him fund his playwright business, There's a reason when he wrote Macbeth, he included 3 witches. It wasn't
Very
just
much.
for the plot. That was Macbeth was intentionally designed as hard as possible to say, "Oi, King James, look at what I can do. Now give me money so that I can build an even bigger studio."
Yes.
And he said yes because not only
um,
did he value witches, but the hero of the play is a distant ancestor, according to, well, lore.
Yeah. Also, joke. Things aside, hundreds of people died horrible deaths during the witch hunts.
Oh yeah,
It's
a
just
lot
not
of
funny.
people were burned just because they were old women, or just people who were kind of weird.
Mm-hmm. Or didn't want to fuck the local magistrate.
Or just they were in the wrong place and some greedy asshole wanted their stuff.
Yeah. So the fun thing here too is that once we get into the Civil War period and the aftermath, is that everyone is fucking paranoid, everyone has a religious mania, and you're a vampire. I want to repeat that.
You're an unholy fiend.
Yes.
Yeah, you're
now,
an undead atrocity.
This is what leads to Kismet, which is a deva from the Ottoman Empire that walks on in and declares himself into the power. And they say that they have a leader that's coming, and they're amazing and all that. The Gallows Post, by the way, has gotten the fuck out of here because they know what's been going on in Europe during this period, and they're like, "Oh, that's gonna happen here."
Also, the Gallows Post eventually die out.
They do. Basically, their purpose to live purpose to be a covenant, dies out.
For those who aren't familiar with vampire, and to restore my shaky memory, are they the vampire mailmen?
Yes. Their original purpose of their covenant was to basically be able to move information between the cities, and move vampires between cities was another big problem back in the day. So they'd offer their services on how to move you, because they'd often have a ghoul or two that could, secure you travel.
Oh, I just thought of something really stupid, but it
Okay.
would work. Vampire 1800s America tied to the Underground Railroad.
The last of the Gallows Post?
Yeah, the last ride of the Gallows Post.
Their only payment, a little payment for every step of the way.
Oh, why can't you see it?
Because they're vampires. They're of course they're gonna fucking.
The last huzzah before
Yeah.
railroad destroys them.
Yeah, the railroad really went into it. So
yeah.
Sorry, hold on, I might have the plague.
Oh, we're not there yet. We're still with Kismet, who just he's there.
Oh no,
He's
there's plague every 3 or 4 years in London at this point.
Yeah.
People like that.
If it's not cholera, it's bubonic plague. If it's not that, it's typhus. If it's not that, it's whatever the fuck someone catches.
Let's see, malaria, typhus,
Cholera.
Cholera. That's the other one that happens all the darn time.
Yep. Now, with that in mind, Kismet does do actually okay.
Mainly because Sildra ran away. Bravely ran away.
Bravely ran away. And the thing is that this Turk actually isn't terrible. However, the problem is that he is a meritocratous person and not a
he favors results, not age.
Not age, which for them is a little bit.
He's younger than they are.
And he's new.
And he's new, and he's an outsider. He's brilliant, but
probably the witches spreading.
Boom. Let's put it this way. Boom. Let's just put it this way. There's another gunpowder plot happens, and except it's not against the king of
it
mortals.
Actually succeeds this time.
Now, this is the thing. It doesn't actually. What happens is the Great Fire of London in 1666.
Oh, no, you forget the worst part of it. After the gunpowder plot kills half of them, a few vampires even report seeing shadowy birds flying high above.
Oh, yeah. Oh.
Yeah.
Sorry, I might be on the wrong space with you because I'm on the War Restoration.
Yeah, essentially it says that they plan, a lot of these elders are planning to take down Kismet, and then it flips to the Great Fire of London, to where it doesn't say it, but it's kind of implied that maybe that wasn't the plan, but whatever they tried to do, it started the Great Fire of London.
Yeah,
and half of them
gunpowder
are dead.
plot.
The
gunpowder plot was way earlier, because that's why I was getting confused. I'm like, where are you getting the gunpowder plot out of this?
Well, basically, they used a big fuckload of gunpowder to try to blow him to Kingdom Come.
Yeah, well, that was just a bit of a joke. Yeah, that was the joke. Mm-hmm. Since this is the era of kings being, this is the era of
Kismet. By the way, they look around and they find he just left before the fires began. So he might have just left started the fires because he knew it was coming, and just got.
Well, he leaves a note saying, "I found my sire. Eat shit, spankety, spankety, spankety," and runs off.
Yeah.
I like how London cannot have a prince that doesn't run away into the wilderness randomly.
I mean, would you want to govern? I mean, at this point in time, London is kind of ungovernable.
Yes. Then you have the Gallows Post coming back in, getting more power, and
then
Invictus
what first happens is the Invictus step in, and then the Sancta Sanctum comes in, and they both have, well, their own claimant now, since both princes have ran away.
Mm-hmm.
Essentially, it becomes the fight versus the nobles versus the clergy. First estate versus second.
Yep.
Not only that, but also purges of other types.
Mm-hmm.
In particular, it seems that the one that takes power. Oh wait, no. They purge among their internals because when St. John takes power, St. John takes power. He starts purging what are called the Blood Blessed.
Yes, which are the I think the equivalent of our good old Circle of the Crown at this point.
Their name changes a lot.
Yeah.
Which is a bit unfortunate.
Mm-hmm. But then there's some more things, and then King James II comes to it. The flat out Roman Catholic,
and it's a little bit wilder. This is very much this is what happens in the city style of section I'm already seeing.
Yeah, because the Sancta Sanctum is still mostly Catholic at this point, so getting the Declaration of Indulgence really shores them up.
Yeah.
Then Orange comes.
No, Bloodblessed aren't full on circle, or if they are, they're very Sanctum adjacent because they're a cult of Mary.
Ah, that actually would be a Circle of the Crown thing.
Interesting take. I actually like that.
I'm just going to read this. The invasion of William the Orange in 1689 brings the glorious revolution that brings an end to the reign of James. He rules jointly with his wife Mary. The events send Archbishop St. John into a frenzy, the news of which reaches the court through his ghoul pleading for help to sedate him. He slaughters a girl and makes an example to the rest on the matters of discretion and obedience, looking rather poignantly at the leadership of the Crown. I'm just going to call him the Crown.
Yeah.
The man who throws a massive monster tantrum. Hey, he's just following your standard English rulers at this point.
How dare the kind replace the kind ruler I like with the kind leader I don't like?
And then, of course, witch hunting, and they're trying to use that to hunt down their enemies, and it backfires spectacularly.
What? It's almost like every single fucking time it's ever happened.
Well, yeah, because St. John wanted the witch hunts, and he was encouraging them because it targeted Circle of Crone. Both Circle of Crone from the actual pagan ones, because there's two circles. There's Weihan Xin, and then there's Blood Blessed, which are kind of, I would almost say they're in between. Like, they're technically circle, but they're so Langtium adjacent. Like, it's almost like they're split loyalty in a way.
But then some of these witch hunters come to realize that
there's other fucking vampires.
Wait a minute. What? The guy that gave me that tip, he had bite marks on his neck.
Also, I've never seen him outside during the day. Wait a minute.
And then they start.
And he has a
casting the
weird
blood
thing
magic.
about crosses. I've always noticed that.
Like, I mean, he's a religious man, I get it, but like, why does that one have a spear?
Yeah,
So
why
some of
are
those-
these weird crosses all over his house? Like,
Also, why
And
does
I've
he have
never
so
seen a
many
plate.
containers of blood? Also, why does he have vials of blood in like the oddest places?
Why does he have a triptych showing a saint that looks like a Roman soldier? I don't think there's one like that. At least not in that pose.
Saint George? Saint George? Essentially, this kills the power of Lanctia Sanctum.
Well, it kills St. John's power specifically.
Yeah, specifically because it mentions a more secular view, as in essentially Sanctum is essentially booted out. Well, not like they're not gone, but like they're not the ones in charge anymore. It's good old Ventru. I mean Invictus. They're both clearly distinct entities.
they are actually.
Wow, wait, how could you have a blood themed cult of Mary? Oh, that blood. Yeah, Impsit, probably.
Yeah, like you easily could have a because it's a mother figure cult. That's what the crone usually looks at. So you can easily have a cult of Mary.
Yeah, and it's actually a very easy way to. It's a very easy way, especially if you disguise yourself as Catholic.
Mm-hmm.
Not as an insult to Catholics. It's just there is not a full on call of Mary, but a lot of veneration of as her as the mother.
Saint.
That you can
veneration of the Virgin, yes.
That you can
also,
then throw in.
So apologies to any Ventru mains out there, but let's come on. We have to admit that
Ventru usually runs Invictus. And in this case,
it's what they inherited. It's the same reason you don't really see the Ventru in Old World and the Anarchs. It's that same kind of thing.
Oh, by the way, because of St. John's meltdown, that's why the Invictus managed to get back power. Because I think their previous claimant for Prince was killed, like straight up.
Mm-hmm.
So now they pull an Irishman.
Yep. The new prince is looking at the fact that the country is unifying and thinks, why don't we all do this if we all speak English? Essentially trying to create a new Camarilla almost. And
centralized.
The thing is, the guy they pick, Mr. Hill, he's not a sir, he's not a knight, he's not a noble. He never was. He was just some rando from Ireland of little power who just kind of managed to make his way to the top through kind of just being in the right place at the right time. He's a dude that's not used to having all, like, even by vampire standards, yeah, he appreciates the power, but like, how did I make it this far as a prince? What did I do? How?
Mm-hmm. Also, he calls for an end of essentially trying to religify the title of prince.
Because this was after decades. Because I think London's comment, like even back when the Circle of Crone had it, like Sildra was established as having elements of the the old Celtic Druid pantheon around that title.
Also, this things borrow from much, and this is still very much the era of divine kingship. And especially before then. So since they take the title
rejecting that because, in his own words, look, we're killing each other over pointless crap. We shouldn't be doing that. Not if we want to actually make the most out of our own lives.
Oh, but then this prince goes to Dublin, where people are he's apparently got a bit of a following, and then he finds Kismet.
Yeah, Kismet's back.
Yeah, he showed back up.
And Elgethafu, the
and apparently they found he has a child, Carmilla.
Yeah,
that Carmilla, for the record.
Yeah,
mm-hmm.
That one, which is quite fun. But yeah, the fact is that Hill gets called a sellout. The elders are kind of getting worse, but the gallows post is no longer as important because roads are better. Plagues are less common. Things that the post was very, very good at helping you deal with no longer have any implication anymore. Mm-hmm. So it's like,
Also, the fact that the fact that the country is becoming more secular, and things like the Witchcraft Act saying that no, that's not a fucking thing, have been passed.
Yeah, basically his initial attempt is to unify together. He goes to Dublin, is rebuffed by Kismet, who escaped there.
And is kind of...
Well, no, he's like, yeah, we can pal out, but like, no, we're as equals. There's no subordinate here, dude.
Mm-hmm.
Then he goes to Scotland, where Sildra is a pathetic wretch who hides in a shithole. No offense, but Edinburgh is nowhere near as impressive as London. But her response is to just tell him to fuck off because, hey, yeah, first off, no, don't try to downgrade faith, and second off, the witch hunts are still going, buddy.
Witch trials, you motherfucker! Like, we need to stop this. Which, admittedly, he does appease her. He starts to pull strings.
Well, it makes sense. This, like, a lot of vampires, there's an entire circle. Like, there's the blood blessed, which aren't really true Christians in the traditional sense anyway.
Yeah.
And yet they're one of his big supporters because, hey, fuck St. John.
Yes, so this also means that he is one of the people that helps get the he's not the main one. But I like how this compares to like the Berlin book. He's not the main one, but he's the one that starts to pull strings to try to get this sort of thing started.
Yeah, he assembles people like James Erskine and a couple of other people, and he's like, well, I'm an influential man in London, he says.
Yeah, I can do this.
Also, hilariously, it's the Circle of the Crown that are his biggest supporters after this, because with the Witchcraft Acts, with people stop believing in magic, that means people... Well, it doesn't actually really hurt them because there's always going to be people, but when the wider majority don't believe anymore, that means people aren't going to be hunting for witches anymore.
Well, not only that, but you don't have self-important narcissists calling themselves witchfinder generals.
Hunters.
They can't legally
hunters.
do that. They can't legally do that.
Well, they couldn't really It was
they weren't punished as hard, but now that it's officially legal, they actually can face punishment now.
And by punishment, they mean being hung. Like a dog.
Hung, drawn, and quartered, depending on who they target.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Lord James Erskill, Scott, is the only opponent of the act.
Yeah.
He learns that his fear of witchcraft comes from the fact that he believes it's very real.
Erskine was the guy who hates witches, yeah.
Because he believes it's very real. And apparently he had a reason to. His wife, he didn't like his wife, so he had her kidnapped and made her believe she was dead, but then the Circle of Crone found her.
Yeah?
Yeah.
And so he was terrified of them.
No, these Celtic vampires, they haunt me. That's your fault, dude.
And so Hill finds out about it just as like...
And laughs.
Like, okay, yeah, okay.
The man who was cucked to death by Celtic vampires.
By vampire lesbian, by vampire lesbians.
Yeah.
Now, the next bit is actually quite interesting because this is part of the thing about the Lancia Sanctum that people forget. They're not just the Catholic Church.
Oh, no,
they have heresies. They have their own little things, and they have their own variants of creeds because monotheistic faiths occasionally need a little bit of tinkering to fit with the idea of being a vampire. Like, think about Judaism, right?
Different, like if you have an organization, certain people come up and communities have different opinions on this.
Yes.
At a certain point, centralized.
Yeah, you have your Orthodox, and then you have your more liberal communities too. Some live on kibbutzes, some don't restrict contraception, some still sacrifice.
Yes, like pigeons and things.
And for some, and the more centralized the organization is, the more it splinters off. Sometimes, the more hostile they are with each other.
Yes.
So having Lancia Sanctum, for example, have a Lutheran branch, that makes perfect sense. You could have a disaffected prince who's like, I'm tired of listening to the higher ups, so I'm gonna join this Martin Luther guy.
Well,
because hey, guess what?
Here's the thing to remember: cities are relatively isolated, so every Lancia Sanctum is going to be slightly different from city to city, but they might be able to keep in contact. This is where the gallows post comes in, right? This is how these covenants stay in contact with each other to actually have a cohesive identity, where they were able to talk like that before. Now it's a lot more fluid, but that meant also that the gallows post had a good idea of what everyone else was doing at any one time, which helped them stay alive.
But I was also just highlighting, though, that because of other events in the Kinds area, like, again, when Martin Luther declares his declarations, certain communities of Lancia Sanctum might either agree with this human's idea, or alternatively see it as a useful means because, hey, guess what? If
We can
I'm
hide
under
through
a
this.
subordinate of a different guy, or if I need to hide from this, it'd be easier for my variant, my little, our little cult, to disavow some of the
Pretend.
more ostentatious stuff and follow along with the kind. Or alternatively, I use this, induct new members, and kill the old ones, so I can become, the current prince or whatever.
The bishop.
The bishop.
If you're basically the lance, if you're an archbishop, if you control a city, you're just a bishop if you're just the head of the lancia in the city.
Yep. And if I can kill the bishop and then just use this as my creed, especially if I, can, because schools are still kind. You can, a lot of them are believing this. Get them on my side. Knives in the night, knives in the day. I'm bishop, baby.
Speaking of knives in the day and the dark, let's at least finish the last essentially paragraph. That's all we need to be said about the history of what happens. Essentially, Charles, the exiled steward, he tries to sail back. It doesn't work.
Horribly.
All of this,
and apparently, as it seems like everything's going well for the Prince of the Hill. Things are actually looking up, and then the very ominous line: he cannot however, the clamor of the bright future ahead. He cannot see a flash of golden eyes, or hear the rustling of dark wings beneath him.
Strix are about to get him.
Yeah, and then new Camarilla fucking die. Camarilla 2.0 dies smothered in its crib. But now we're back to London tonight. London between 1587 and 1593 is a modern cosmopolitan city of 200,000.
By the time period, it was modern and sprawling.
I know. Well, I completely agree with sprawling.
It definitely was a very sprawling city. It was also, to some degree, a mess of a city. There wasn't really any planning for London at all. Compared to a lot of even other cities of the area, it just sort of grew, caught on fire, and then regrew again. London was...
The fire cleanses.
Yeah, and you'd get the occasional fire, and those fires would wipe out entire neighborhoods, and then you just rebuild there. Which, part of the reason why London kind of, even today, looks a little weird is partially because of that.
Yeah. And... what's this disturbing note? The kindred no longer need to cultivate and herd and their own familiar herds. Essentially, the population in the city, they don't have to do weird eugenics experiments anymore.
More accurately, they don't have to keep ghouls around just to feed on.
You don't have to be the weirdos hiding in your weird crack shack or castle as a weird cult or as an elusive lord now.
Yeah, it's kind of great. There's food's everywhere now,
which means that you can interact among the normals more.
You can get
if someone gets a little too hangy and someone dies, as long as
just kill some homeless people. Go to Whitechapel and kill some homeless people.
No one cares.
No, that's in 200 years.
But just kill someone who lives near the river, and then just dump it in, and no one will ask questions.
No one will care.
Yeah, there are bodies in the river all the time.
And people drink out of it.
Of course they do.
People piss in it, they shit in it, they throw the bodies in, they throw the garbage in, they drink the shit. They drink
there's actually a job which is just literally fishing things out of the river.
Yeah.
Oh yeah, that's the other fun job.
And they wondered why cholera was so rampant.
Don't mind me.
None of them knew
about. You get to see our pretty faces for a little bit because some dummy on Steam keeps on trying to play games. So apologies for that, viewers. It's not your fault that they keep playing. There we go.
Cultivate.
There we go. We're back to the food. Again, another common... here's another thing. You also have the alehouses and taverns, which they are the lifeblood, literally, for you.
And brothels. Don't forget the whorehouses.
Yep. There's the brothels. There's a lot of brothels in London. An obscene amount of brothels in London.
To give you an idea, it's funny. Alcoholism is so prevalent that there used to be actually a term called the quadruple X. X referring to the amount of alcohol, I think it's the number of fortifications of the alcohol that goes in a product. Elizabeth banned quadruple X processing because people are drinking so much.
Mm-hmm.
And it wasn't actually an issue with the drinking, because here's the thing. She ordered millions of barrels of alcohol herself. It's just, you're getting so drunk as a skunk.
It's hard to be productive.
Yeah, it was destroying productivity.
Speaking of production, in a darker news, because in a dark little piece of lore fact, but kind of makes sense because remember, to reiterate, as much as you might like your vampires, as a general whole, your entire species race is are fucking monsters. Apparently, a favorite thing that vampires like to do to get their feed is that they'll break into plague houses and drain the victims.
Yeah, because nobody's going to notice that they're gone.
Or also bleeding. Also, regular bloodletting is a perfectly natural way to cure madness.
Yeah. Just go to the insane asylum.
Go
to Bedlam.
Oh, I just realized something really stupid because you mentioned plague houses. This is it's not a English topic. It's actually a French topic. One of the Dauphins of France actually died because he and his retainers decided to have fun by doing a sleepover at a fucking plague house. They literally entered the plague house with the doctors going, "No, don't go in. They have the bubonic plague." And he had a literal pillow fight with his men, with the plague with plague infested pillows, with the dead skins and fucking fleas.
Also,
and he dropped dead, obviously, from the buboes.
Also, this is wonderful. Apparently, since plague victims can only have funerals at night, apparently the thing some particularly creepy vampires like to do, they'll like to prey on the mourning grief of people to get them to accept a kiss. And by kiss, you know what I mean.
Yeah.
Oh, yeah,
there's also
vampires are horrible. Vampires are horrible. People always forget this.
Yeah, like
especially
when
their
people
players,
talk
especially
about
their players.
older vampires, when people talk about like sexuality with like older vampires do not give an absolute fuck. All they care about is the blood. They would gladly get railed by 20 dudes or 20 girls, whatever the fuck, any night, every night, as long as they got to feed.
They don't feel anything anyway, so it's
also
fine.
They feel no pity. Also, they feel no guilt or pity.
Or pain.
Right.
Unless the sword's been actually planted through their head by a jealous lover, they don't feel it.
Yeah.
So here are the folks. So a big thing happening in London, we mentioned it, is the rise of the middle class. And
yeah.
This is mainly because what Good Queen Bess did was she limited how many titles of nobility came out. Same with bishops.
Yes. This would be something that James the First would immediately ditch. James was very fond of just giving random people full titles. In general, James is one of those kings where it's like, oof, big oof.
Also,
no, my vampires have to rebel, fighting against the corrupt ruling class. I mean, hey, if you want to be parts of Michael Hill's attempt to reboot the Camarilla by kicking Sinjon out, I don't think that anyone would stop you.
I mean, like,
I know you're making
be.
fun of people who play D&D 5th edition that don't really know you can still play awful people. But,
I mean,
no, you could totally do that. Like, Sinjon was a genuinely terrible prince. Not to the Lanctia Sanctum, but to all the other vampires, which Lanctia Sanctum wasn't all of them. Yeah, he was garbage.
Yeah. Lancea, again, and this is one of the things I like about Covenants more than like the Camarilla, Anarch, Sabbat divide, is that Covenants can be very flexible to what you need them to do in whatever city you're running. Like, you want a group of Carthians that what they do is their entire philosophy is, we want to do cool ass shit at night and we don't care about whatever anyone else thinks. You can do that. You want a group of them that does just illegal street races.
You can do that.
There you go.
You want some that are actively planning a race riot. I think that's not that's not the dumbest thing you could think them doing.
If you want a weird take on Lanctia Sanctum, if you want them to be a break off from Mormonism that started up a pyramid scheme / cult, go right ahead, buddy.
Yeah.
So long as it's new and breaking new ground.
If you want the Invictus to play like the feudal nobles, sure. If you want them to play like ruthless business moguls from the 1980s, go right ahead.
If you want them to play,
Literally mafia,
like
or as
I was
gangs,
gonna
or like the Bloods and Crips.
I was gonna say white. I was gonna say white bread. I was gonna say white. Like your white bread, really like upper crust, middle class.
Oh yeah, if you
Yeah,
want them to be just yuppies, sure. If you want them to be an evil homeowners association, go right ahead with the Invictus there.
Yeah, hell, you can make the Invictus basically just a street gang, like literally a drug
just
dealing
one
network.
with deep ties, just at least one with some sort of deep ties.
Like its deep ties is in that this is my turf. I assign you that turf, and you get your gang sign. You're the third street bloods now, or whatever.
The Crones,
Any
slightly
mother
mystical,
cult, like
slightly
if you
feminist.
want them, just any mother cult will do.
Like not even mother cult, like just slightly feminist, slightly mystical. Doesn't like, yeah, like so long as it's kind of is slightly religious.
You could have an order of the Crone that focuses on selling women's yoga pants.
Yes, you could. You could also have one that is literally a apocalyptic cult that wants to cause the Antichrist.
Yeah,
whatever.
Sanctia Sanctum, they could hilariously also do that thing about the Antichrist.
Oh yeah,
yeah. I mean, remember they're obsessed with testing the sins of humans and to see if they can make them fail.
Enforcing the tribulation is one of those ways.
And while they wouldn't be relevant in this situation, they don't have to be Christian.
If I remember correctly, you could totally have you could have 12 or Lanctia Sanctum, where they just repurpose Longinus as Ali.
I'm not really sure I'm not 100% sure how it would translate well to like to non-Abrahamics, but they have shown things for at least the Abrahamic faiths.
You just pick specific figures that kind of vaguely match Longinus.
And then finally, Dracul. Their mad scientist.
Mad Scientist is one. My favorite is still the Silicon Valley cult, like similar to the Cult of Musk.
Yeah,
like the weirdos who worship Elon Musk, just like that, but with the Silicon Valley twist.
They're not they're kind of like the Carthians in the thing that they like progress, but theirs is less social progress and more technological.
Well, not even technological. At the end of the day, they just want to punch vampirism in the balls.
Knowledge progression.
Knowledge, yeah.
Yep. And
basically, I the one thing I think about whenever I think about the Order of Dracul is I think the Telvanni from Morrowind. Just like they do not give a shit. They just want to.
No cost too great, no pain too much to bear.
Yeah, like in that's basically the Ordo.
An idea to break off Mormon vampires with polygamous cult. Yeah, you could totally have a Circle of Crone Mormon break off.
Yeah, you could have really any group that decides that what they want to do is breed a ghoul cult around themselves. That's not unusual for some vampires to try to do at some point.
Also, as I mentioned with the run of the folk, violence is very not uncommon in just regular everyday life, especially if you're a man. Especially if you're a man, to where if you want to play more combat, like a very brutish kind of combat heavy character, that's a perfectly you don't have to like make some complicated story of being an expert. No, you're a member of the militia who just really fucking loves the brawling pits.
No, you're just a street tough in fucking London, mate.
Literally, yeah,
all you're children
doing is
getting to fight, not to fights to the death, but like first blood, like 5-year-old children beating each other up to the point teeth are getting knocked out.
Yeah, I mean they're 5, so that's not as big of a deal, but still.
As it also mentions, while under this current prince, whatever you call it, the Vampire Sanctum, they're very laissez-faire about justice. So the vampires kind of do they kind of obviously they're the one in charge.
Crown, but
Yeah, it is customary for while the court is normally a place of peace, the vampires regularly take justice in their own hands. It is customary for Neo-Knights who transgress the laws or customs to be beaten into torpor and dropped off at their sire haven. If the son reaches them before the sire does, there is no consequence.
Yeah, screw you. So don't fuck up.
Yeah. Basically, like if you're a fuck up, they're not going to play polite here in London. There's some cities where they might. This is not one of them, at least not at this time.
They're not going to ask for permission before they do this. They're just going to do it.
And in this time period, because they're trying to hammer home that Sildra is in command, even though it should be... Oh, wait, no, she would be still in 1593.
Yeah. Yeah, because this... Yeah.
Yeah, religion's a big element here. And the problem
Catholic
is...
assassination.
Yeah.
Crazy cults.
Well, it's not only just Catholic plots, but there's a variety of strains of Protestantism. There's your Anglican community, which is still trying to hammer out exactly what they are. You have the more pure, you have the stronger Puritan strain, the high churchers. But then you have, straight up just Calvinists, like actual Reformed Church members, Lutherans. You even have, because
Anabaptists.
Anabaptists, which in this time period were not peaceful.
No.
And also,
Anabaptists only adopted that after they lost their massive religious wars.
Also, don't forget, like, the Adamites are also around again.
And for and for people who like Thanksgiving, the people who would come, the Pilgrims, are kicking around.
Yeah, the Puritans.
Grumbling.
The Puritans are honestly, there's a reason why
they're not relevant yet, but I'm saying they're kicking around. I'm not saying they're relevant, I'm saying they're kicking around.
And this is the time period where, because they're not intercommunicating as well, because they have to rely on the gallows, they haven't quite cottoned on how to hammer home the problems of faith together well. Not that it'll always fully be successful even in modern day, but especially during this time period, it's a bitch if you're Lanctius Sanctum to try to get a variety of Christian faiths to work together.
While Lanctius Sanctum of later years will later recruit from many different faiths of the newly dead, in 1593 it is riddled with cracks as it attempts to indoctrinate Christians with radically different beliefs. Worse, belief in God is no longer a given. The word atheism has originally gone for people who do not deny, has recently come to mean people who deny God. At this period, it's a slur. However, the Reformation has opened up people to public doubt.
Yeah, but they usually get mocked or still killed.
Yeah,
I know, but it's just essentially saying the divine right of God is
path of trying to appeal to the fedora tipper crowd, though.
No, this is actually a thing that is a theory this is a theory that is coming in around now to a degree. This isn't a tip to them. They're very rare. And even 9 then,
times out of 10, they're just going to call themselves a deist.
Or yeah.
Mm-hmm. Yeah,
because there's definitely a lot of religious questioning because of the fact that you're getting these holy books written, but how do you know that's actually that?
Why does man have the right? Why does man have the right to decide the word of God?
Exactly.
I know. I'm more just saying that essentially, even in a lot of the very religious people mind, the complete divinity of God to choose the right of, as I mentioned, the divine right of kings, slipping away.
Oh, and if you're wondering, I think the Aquarian Heresy is something Lanctius Sanctum had to deal with.
Yes, it's a bloodline of the Ventru that basically kind of tried to take over the church in certain areas. Well, this Lancia. There's more details in another book. They're kind of in France right now, I think.
It's a slight nod to that, and it's a slight nod to that, basically.
Nope. Yeah. The leisure activities and now the fun. The leisure activities for Kindred are what? For those with athletics, hunting and fishing, or you could play tennis.
Or you could do parkour before parkour was cool, as this...
like these two women.
Yep. I feel like this could have been in a Disney movie if it was done by people on meth.
In private, Kindred like to use their horribly bred ghouled up dogs in dog fights.
Yeah, that's a very common thing. Dog fighting, game fighting in general.
No, to date, no one has brought a ghoul bear no one has brought a ghoul bear yet.
I'm surprised they don't mention gamecocks. Chicken fighting.
Yeah, mind you, it's because. Have you ever tried to feed blood to a chicken?
It's not that hard. Chickens will eat anything.
Yeah, but
blood liquid.
Just mix it into their feed. They'll eat it.
Mm-hmm. An audience of vampires.
Pizza. They'll eat maggots. They'll eat themselves.
Also, once again, to reiterate, vampires are bad people. In their pit fights, it is very much expected for someone to die. Not not an unexpected. Back to what we're doing. No, they want death.
Oh, Ghoul Animals. Yeah, they exist in both Old World, in the World of Darkness, and in Chronicles. They do exist. In fact, actually, there is a very interesting little setting in modern-day Turkey where a strain of ghoul animals have gone feral and wild everywhere. And it's bad times if you're in Istanbul.
It's literally the wild cats in Istanbul.
Someone thought it was a great idea to ghoul them.
Well, yeah, somebody started to ghoul cats because they're great like spies, they're great all that.
They're great spies. But they're easily
the problem is that they died, and now there's a bunch of cats that are addicted to blood, and they're ghouls. So
not only that, but I think the cats turned on him because he made too many.
No, they didn't actually. What they did is they found a torpid vampire and they ate it. So the thing is that these amaranthine cats, they usually kill maybe a neonate or two a year, who goes into the wrong alley and gets jumped by a bunch of cats.
Not including how many other poor bastards. Not counting any other poor bastard.
No, it's literally only what do you say? It's literally only vampires that they're going to be
yeah, they only
hungry
care
for.
About Vitae. Vitae is like the
it makes sense. And speaking of horrible dog fights, fighting.
Yeah, you're gonna have to spill some blood.
Yeah,
Invictus is having a civil war. The Sister of Crone is actually pretty united.
Relatively stable.
They're quickly losing power.
The Lancia Sanctum is having a bit of a problem, and the Gallows Post is relatively stable, but
they're sitting pretty. But because of the upcoming issues,
losing irrelevance.
They're the thing that gets them their power might be disrupted, which they're not happy about.
Yeah, so this is also our first description of the Gallows Post here. So the agents of the Crown watch the roads, looking out for Catholics and the man in Rome. Travel is still very dangerous, which is where the gallows come in. They're basically highwaymen, messengers, and traders, basically, that bring information and people and vampires and everything else all over.
If you want an excuse to have not globe trotting, but county trotting campaign, make sure everyone's in the gallows post.
Or you don't have to be, but you need at least a couple of guys in the gallows post.
Yeah, it'll make things simpler. And of course, they have their own sects. We'd have the foxes, who are the spy, who are the gossip mongers and spies among them.
They're the guys that basically they listen to gossip among the cities and trade them around like old wives do.
Mm-hmm. The sparrows are the guys who sit in the back of the room just watching everyone. They aren't the political machine, but they're the ones that feed the political machine.
They know everything and they talk.
And the hounds are the people. And the hounds are the people that do the butchery. To put it bluntly.
Not just butchery. They're the guys that basically have to risk their asses out in the woods.
Yeah.
In the road. They're the guys that guide your butts between cities.
Yeah. They butcher the mortal highwaymen and have to be the one that probably have to fight off the fucking werewolves.
Because werewolves will go after vampires sometimes.
Sometimes. New World, they might if they're violating their territory and they're kind of like a part of their sacred hunt.
Old World is very different, and that's why vampires stay in city in Old World.
In Old World, if you leave the cities, werewolves kill you.
Or mages kill you.
Or anything. Or, well, not really mages. Unless you're in Milwaukee, in which case they own a brewery there.
I'm just making the joke that anything will kill you in Old World.
Oh yeah, to give you an idea, as soon as you walk out of the city, you might instantly just die because you entered outside of the game map.
I was gonna say no, you die because you're Tremere, and someone didn't like how you getting too far away from the pyramid.
No, I got it. You take one step out and then you clip through the ground and die instantly.
The Skyrim.
So the merit is envoy. You get envoy as a merit if you're a part of the gallows post. Well, you don't get it, but you can put dots into it.
But yeah, and it doesn't really do anything. It doesn't flat out like do anything. Like, it doesn't give you a bonus. But essentially, this means that it's the old adage: don't shoot the fucking messenger.
If you're in a new city, you get things you can grab and use, which is actually quite useful. It means that, for example, your city cannot be pursued or intercepted in an intercity travel unless the skill, effect, or power achieves more successes than their dots. This is actually really, really, really strong.
Yep.
Because think about it like this. Someone's casting blood magic on you. You leave the city. If their blood magic does not score enough successes than your envoy, you're fine.
And it's kind of a nod to you don't shoot the messenger, and if you shoot the gallows post, well, good luck. You're locked out of what's going on elsewhere.
Second part of the travel: when traveling, announce their intended receiver, be this a person, faction, or even the government. You or the storyteller must specify a gift, a rumor, or something that you're giving them, because you're at the end of the day a courier, usually in this case, and that you have to receive. And essentially, you have some stated bonuses until you deliver this, because if you're killed while carrying this, that's a lot of problems.
And third, once per story, know enough people too.
Third, once per story, once per essentially city for you probably. Half of your character's envoy dots, rounded up, which is useful, count towards allies or contacts in any city you arrive in.
So if you're just like a 1-dot envoy, you get a dot towards allies or contacts because you just know a little bit, even as a rookie.
Or if you're 5, you have 3. You could have 3 allies,
which is powerful.
3-dot allies.
3 or
this is
really
a genuinely good resource to have.
Yeah, it's a great merit. I think it's very fluffy. It's very.
And it also gives reasons for gallows posts for you to not be killed.
Mm-hmm. Yeah. Though, like I said, the real power comes from the fact if you're traveling between cities. If the whole thing is going to center on one city that you never leave, this is much less useful.
Oh yeah. Which leads to the Invictus, which during this time, they are very strongly in command. A lot of as you do.
Mm-hmm. We've done these guys over before.
The Invictus are going through a minor sect problem because of the differences in rules of the Tudors. See, most of the old Invictus are used to the way that your old monarchs did, like what the Plantagenets and what the Normans did, and what the earlier Tudors did, where your title means things. You get you're based on influence, on your wealth, and what you provide in that order. That's changing because of how Elizabeth is working. She doesn't reward noble titles. There's the access to fripperies like that is getting cut off. So now it's the guys that are leaner and hungrier and more competent that make it in.
And then there are the merchants, the greedy middle class who are clawing their way into relevancy.
So the faction that we see the most of, especially in the later parts of not just Tudor England, but this period of time for England, is the New Camarilla, which Hill represents the most, which canonically gets fucking destroyed.
But for now, they're relevant.
And the old Invictus are kind of your more, your old guard. They see things as staying the same. Like, we just rule this city and we connect with others and try to keep things under lock.
And then
the most radical are the war dogs.
They actually, but funnily enough, they don't like getting their hands dirty specifically.
This is actually kind of ingenious, and I do like this actually quite a bit.
They keep a list bound within a black leather-bound book that represents all the mortals who have ever crossed them and all the things they want to take from them.
Once the name is on the list, they work tirelessly through their mortal instruments to ruin their lives. And once their chosen mortal has been abased and reduced to nothing, they move on as a means of salvation and offer a loan with destructive terms. These guys actually, I love these guys, and you want to know why?
Why?
They are a strong nod to the Howard brothers. The professional witnesses that often would be brought to Henry VIII. Like, I saw them drinking. It's a nod to them. It's a nod to the people who would accuse others and just destroy their lives or get them executed, and they'd make money. Remember, if you're wondering, I think it's the Seymour brothers, actually.
Yeah,
but
what happens is one eventually snitches on the other so they can get their usury stuff from them. It culminates in that. One brother tries the other.
Genius.
I'd also say this is a bit of a call forward towards the thief taker generals that emerge in the next 100 to 50 years.
It's a nod to that, but I'm thinking it's more based on the Seymour brothers, the professional witnesses, and the guys who framed so many of King Henry VIII's enemies.
Yeah, this is the game giving you a really interesting faction that you could port into basically any time period as the Invictus. It's basically loan sharks.
Then there are the spy masters.
Loan sharks styled in the vein of the Count of Monte Cristo, where you're doing it just to ruin these people.
And even among the war dogs, they're an elite. The clausto costio from the Latin phrase clausto ostio ora apre, closed mouth, open pocket. These guys have infiltrated Elizabeth's spy masters, so they have a lot of contacts
and a lot of dirt.
That's actually really interesting. As a way to play the Invictus is not as like the open power brokers, but as like
the spy masters.
Why play the power broker when the secret police is really where that power comes from?
Exactly.
Also, while the secret police are a nebulous thing with no faces, the monarch's the clear angry face you can be angry with, and that you're not focused on. You think about their all crimes and you forget that the secret police are there.
This is actually an Invictus that I would run in a city where the Invictus aren't in power. This is an Invictus that is either playing second fiddle to, like, say the Carthians, and have established themselves as like negotiated themselves into a position where they're basically the Carthian secret police to keep everything kind of working, so that the Carthians don't have to pretend that, like, this is, like, the Carthians that way can pretend that everything's going fine while the Invictus are really pulling a lot of strings behind the scenes. Or, like, in a city where, like, the Ordo Dracul is in power, where they're not really super obsessed with politics. So the Invictus is simply...
Well, you're saying this, but that's actually why they're doing it, because in 1593, Circle of the Crone is still in power. It's
exactly.
Fading, but they're still in power.
Exactly.
That's what you do if you're the second banana.
Speaking of second bananas, Lanctia Sanctum is coming out, and of course they've got some interesting things going on with heresy.
There's a lot of schisms. There's the Edict of Thessalonica, which
they're still bitching. They're still bitching about things from 1,000 years ago.
Yep. Then you get into the really interesting ones,
which is in this for this setting. For Lanctia Sanctum stayed among the Western, stayed with the Latin Rite and keeping with the precepts of Rome, the standard Catholic. Things, however, are forcibly changed due to a mixture of beforehand Protestant Reformation bringing converts over to England and, proselytizers, preachers, believers. But then man-child Henry VIII
destroys their monasteries.
Not only destroys their monasteries, he uses the money to build amazingly insane projects like Non-Such Palace, which was effectively the world for it. I think it ate like 5 to 10% of the budget each year. It was just a giant monument to Henry's narcissism. It was just this giant fucking palace.
Also, don't forget, even before that, he was burning his country's treasury on gifts to the Pope.
Yeah, this was before then. So Henry basically said, "Fuck the Pope." He told me no. I am head of church.
I'm still protector of the faith, though.
I'm protector of the faith and head of the church now.
And now we get into the sects. The Keepers of the Word, they're Orthodox, quote unquote, and by Orthodox I don't mean Orthodox Christian. I mean they're Orthodox in that they feel as though they are the most traditional, the most adherent to it.
They're the ones that documented, that keep the documents and followings of their founder, because in Lanctia Sanctum lore, their founder, and in Catholic reckonings, it would be known as Saint Longinus, the Roman soldier who stabbed Jesus at the side. They believe he is their founder, and that because of what he did to the Son of God, he was cursed with vampirism, similar to Cain. And they documented and follow his lives and basically precepts that this character came up with.
So what they talk about is that there's actually a bunch of what's called the Dark Saints as well, where these are the vampires that Longinus would eventually create. Most notably Monarchus, who's essentially the Saint Peter of the faith.
Vampire world.
So much like how Catholics have saints, and a variety of other Christian doctrine, the Eastern Orthodox have saints, Oriental Orthodox have saints. Some strains of Protestantism, primarily Anglicans, do.
Anglicans, I think, basically keep every single Catholic.
Mormonism.
Mormonism doesn't quite have that. They have just presidents instead.
Yeah, I was going to say they have the Holy Founder. I meant
that's
the
it.
Holy
But
that's it.
For the Lanctiac Sanctum, theirs is the Dark Saints. They add that's their kind of. They actually are a Christian spin-off. They are straight up in a lot of ways Christian, just a very weird schismatic as a result of being monsters.
Mm-hmm.
And Keeper of the Word are the most hardline of these.
Yes. I also want to note that they go relic hunting, destroy records that contradict their own
also there are
things, and attack anyone that they don't like.
Well, on top of that, the Keepers of the Word... I'm sorry I'm interrupting, Greg.
Yeah.
The Keepers of the Word also follow Longinus's precepts the hardest, which include make man realize their errors by terrifying them into rethinking their life. These are the ones that go after humans the hardest. They're the ones that either try to destroy their lives to see, like the tests of Job, or just fucking rob them and scare them within an inch of their life, bearing fangs and like looking like the horrible monsters they are, to scare them back on the right path, or to see if they falter and then they kill them. These are these guys.
And if you want to play a Sabbat in this, you can. These are unironically these guys in a way, because, as I put, these sanctify, embrace the role as the god's vengeance. In the affirmative, they have little regard for the masquerade, aid since the night's roam. They believe the world is ending, in that London is a pit of mad greed and sensual pleasure, and that they should both embrace it and purify it.
So yeah, the Keepers of the Word have kind of lost their minds because of the Reformation, causing a lot of shakeups in their organization.
If we're talking about radical reactions, to reformations, we can also talk about the Keepers of the Flame, whose motto is "Kill them all."
So beasts, but honest about themselves. Yeah, that's essentially Lanctiac Sanctum's concept. Yeah. They realize that
we're monsters.
We have been cursed
awful
to
monsters,
walk the
cursed
earth.
by God.
We want others to be better. Our only purpose now is to prevent others from being damned in the same way we have, by scaring them straight on the path of righteousness. For we will not see the kingdom of heaven, but we'll make sure these motherfuckers do.
Mm-hmm. Speaking of seeing the kingdom of heaven early, Keepers of the Flame, whose motto is "Kill them all." God knows who his own are.
Nice. That's a literal ripoff of the Albigensian Crusade. I love it.
When they gather, there are long, winding speeches about preserving the morality of the flock, burning the wicked, and protecting the faith. They like fire a lot. For vampires, they really like fire.
And their own saying, to clear a boil, one must lance it and drain it of its contagion.
Mm-hmm. Also, they currently are dealing with the heresy called the Children's Crusade.
Oh, that's not a good thing. Like the Children's Crusade and Chronicles of Darkness, not good.
Some horrible asshole is vampiring children.
Not only that, but it's suspected that not all of those child vampires are really vampires.
There's Striga.
Yeah. Some of them might be possessed by owls. Yeah, some dumb motherfucker.
Got rid of them.
Some dumb motherfucker embraced a bunch of children.
I think the term is evil. Like, even by vampire standards, it's
no, there's evil. There's evil. Like the Keepers of the Flame are evil. They burn those that they deem unworthy. That's evil. Then there's stupid evil, aka the man who made the Children's Crusade.
No, so the thing is that the Children's Crusade is a group of child vampires. Because you've got to remember that back in the day, you kind of had a lot of younger people out and about and doing... Yeah. So there would be some twisted fucks who would turn them into vampires because either they're like, they're going to starve to death and I want company, or they're just sort of like,
ha ha ha! Isn't it so funny to keep this being in the form of a mortal child for the rest of eternity?
Well,
yeah.
There's a third reason too that sometimes, like, I'm not justifying because they are monsters. There are enough people. A majority of them were formed just because hungry. But in Chronicles of Darkness, it is entirely possible if you've drained a fucker dry, they'll get back up.
Yeah.
Which also means they killed a child then, which means they drain the child.
They drain the child, and sometimes that accidentally causes an embrace.
Yeah,
and those are the worst. And those are the worst ones, though.
Revenant, yeah, because revenants effectively are controlled by their beast until they gain
zombies.
And yeah,
they're effectively zombies.
So the Children's Crusade is made from a pastiche of them, Strigoi, and monstrous experiments done by just evil assholes who are like, forever stuck as a stunted body, forever protected from the ravages of age.
And the Children's Crusade's primary goal is to burn the world for all the wrong that's been done to them.
Because when they wake up, imagine being 10 years old and forever being stuck at 10.
Also, this is, remember, the flat out thing is kind of quite obvious when you look at how vampires act, and it's flat out said. It's hard for vampires to really mature past when they die.
So imagine a bunch of children who see their parent whose parents reject them in fear, or they kill them in bloodthirst. Their friends move on without them, and they die while they live on. Like, the beast, their humanity degrades a hell of a lot faster than it does for fully grown people.
Because they're not mature enough to understand what's going on.
And never will be.
Right.
Like,
this isn't to say that, like, there's not good stuff involved with, like, the Children's Crusade, because on the one hand, it's keeping them alive, right? The Children's Crusade altogether keeps these children somewhat in line and not being all.
Quote.
The covenant of because this was a rogue covenant that was rapidly wiped out as quickly as it could.
But this rogue covenant has a rogue covenant.
Yeah.
The First Temptations. And oh god, is that a terrible fucking name from a splinter of the Children's Crusade, as in the serpent tended Eve with the apple of knowledge. They arranged tests for their mortal followers. Some are tests that seem they're just traps and punishments that mean death, but the members maintain that they are always culling the morally weak.
Which, yeah, if you're wondering, the Children's Crusade, and this is why Lanctia Sanctum fight these followers of the Flames that are focused on it. Theirs was a sin of their own creation. One of their members created the core group of children that would found it.
Yeah.
That's why the followers of the Flame Keepers of the Flame are so desperate to hunt them all down. Because these are a splinter of Lanctia Sanctum. That's why they justify what they do.
Yes.
And there's nothing the church does more than covering up their old laundry.
Well, wouldn't you if the bishop of, like, your town fucking for shits and giggles decided to punish the parents that they deemed sinners by embracing their children, and then those children went on to cause a hell of a lot of trouble, and then form a group designed to both burn everything down, including you? Wouldn't you hate both him and them?
Yeah, whoopsie-doodles.
Oopsies, I tried to punish the father by punishing the son.
Oh, also, by the way, as a little final note, Invictus has a blood grudge against Lanctia because they still blame them for the fall of Rome.
Yeah, they're not wrong. We'll get to that, actually, I think.
Mm-hmm. And as Enlightenment encroaches, they're siding with that to make Lanctia irrelevant.
Yeah, that's the big thing. Invictus and Lanctium don't get along well traditionally.
Mm-hmm.
No, traditionally they do.
It's the first, but at the end of the day, it is the first versus the second state.
Yeah. They do, but don't. It depends on how the Prince and Bishop, or Archbishop and head of the Invictus at that area handle it.
Now, speaking of things Lanctia Sanctum hates, though, the Crones.
Well, yeah, the Wei Henshin, or I don't know how to pronounce it. It's some horrible. It's a
the
horrible
Lords of
Eldritch
Dark.
language.
They're called the Lords of Dark. Let's go with that.
Crone.
Yeah.
Yeah.
They're sort of the crone and sort of not.
They're crone.
But yeah, they basically are crone. So the main thing to note is that what they do is that they often make deals with other supernaturals to do things for them. They'll play the go-between. They'll do all that, at least on the Isles itself. And part of the issue that they have is that they are now starting to lose their power. They were able to keep it for quite a long time, even after the collapse of the pagan religion, by having allies that can do things like cast, a lightning bolt for you that you really can't defend against easily as the
not only that, but these are people who like, for vampires, even spirits are bad for everyone. They're one of the few vampires that actually specialize in dealing with them.
Mm-hmm. But the problem
not just
is
with deals. I mean, like, literally banishing them back to the Umbra.
They're mystics. Problem is,
I forget what the spirit realm's called in Chronicles.
The Shadow.
The Shadow. They banish them back to the Shadow.
Yes. Now, with that in mind, it's starting to get a little touchy for them.
Mm-hmm. Invictus is slowly encroaching upon their position.
Well, they've been doing it for centuries at this point, but it's starting to rapidly accelerate.
They can see the glass ceiling approaching.
Because at the end of the day, these are pagans that you can't openly worship Ceranos. You can't worship the Morrigan. You can't worship the standing stones like you do anymore. Not without being burned at the stake for being a pagan.
Also, a lot of their people who used to come to them for mystical aid are kind of realizing that they don't have the monopoly on it and are leaving.
Yeah.
Also, all these Elizabethan spy things are starting to
because Elizabeth get a little is looking for weird cultists. Elizabeth is looking for weird Christians and Catholic cultists that are planning to overthrow her.
Mm-hmm.
Weird people worshipping standing stones probably would consider overthrowing her too.
Mm-hmm. Also, Lanctius Sanctus is getting a little too rowdy.
Well, yeah, this is before Sinjon kind of successfully wins the blood struggle over that. Well, there's still the Ottoman Deva guy first, but
anyway, these guys don't really have that many new sects. They only have the one, the Dolgon Ketten.
The Secret Keepers,
yeah. And they actually come with their own new little thing. Contract with the Uncanny. The kindred must share the night, but they share it with a position of power. The circle holds over vampire society is rooted in the ancient pacts with Bryn's other supernatural forces. As a member, the contract can personally call upon these ancient bargains.
So, yeah, you can pick a faction of a supernatural creature. Usually it'll be something like werewolves, but there's others, and you can specify specifically. And the bargain which affects depends on how many levels you got.
Mm-hmm.
But you can get the aid of creatures you otherwise couldn't.
Also, if the more you specify, also, as it kind of says, the more you specify, the more powerful it is. So, for instance, if you just had like a few dots with werewolves, you'll have low level influence. But if you specify with, say, maybe one powerful entity like Saint Alba, that could count as a level 6 favor.
Yeah,
which is big.
Yeah. So when you take a look at the levels here, the level for the favors that you can grab are actually really, really strong.
Yep. Even level 1 momentarily inconvenience, but level 2 inconveniences them for a while.
Yeah. As you put enough points, if you get enough, if say you specify for someone with enough influence, obviously that person may not be relevant most of the time because of how specific they're going to be. But if you can call up a level 7 favor with something of importance, favor means certain death for someone.
It's very powerful, and this is the big reason that the Crone are still around.
Exactly.
They have a lot of old. They've been around a lot. They have a lot of old promises to collect upon.
That is for sure.
Mm-hmm.
Now, the other thing to locate here is that they also mentioned that, for example, the changelings are very much useful for this sort of thing, but they're easy to place against there. However, the Sin Eaters really not so much,
because they're
kind
of stuck in their own cult. So Elizabethan era Sin Eaters are in a weird, probably like Anabaptist cult or something strange like that.
Yeah, they could be.
Actually,
or they could just be
imagine like
Sin
some
Eaters.
weird Anabaptist cult though, where like when the second baptism actually is until you drown to induct a new member into the order.
Also, there's probably a lot of weird like people believing that they got the revelation. I mean, they're back from the dead, like Jesus.
Yeah. Yeah, there's a lot of Christian weirdos out there, so that's what I'm envisioning with them.
And they name a few, and here are some of the interesting people.
I'm kind of sad they don't highlight the other cult. They mentioned the Blood Blessed. They should have probably brought them up again.
But yeah, we've got the people of importance. We've got the Queen of the Crones. We've got
Sildra, yeah.
We got the Lord. We've got the Anglo Lord of Sanctum. Because that fucking AE, I hate those.
Caedmon, but the problem is I hate. Here's what I hate. You have Old English names bonded with Celtic names. Welsh, particularly. Pick one, asshole.
Yeah,
then
this section is just a bunch of examples of characters for your game.
Yeah. No, I say one of these people is important that I think hilariously, I don't think. Does anyone remember this guy being mentioned? Richard Bythway.
Well,
he's the head of Invictus.
Well, Caedmon also doesn't get mentioned at all either, so.
Yeah. Oh, at least this is it.
Yeah,
no,
Richard's
got mentioned
never
before.
been mentioned.
Caedmon got mentioned before. No, Caedmon got mentioned before.
Once.
Yeah, but that's still more than Richard.
Also, there's the vampire disguised as Walsingham.
Yeah.
There's Mary Seton, who's a ghoul.
There's several ghouls and several.
Cicely Rowe. I'm not a fan so much of them picking like some of the more important ones that are. Oh no,
actually,
these are made up.
Actually, yeah. These aren't even disguised as ghouls. They're just agents. I mean, they're not all the time they have to be ghouls. And some of them are probably
Victus
ghouls.
Climber, insightful foreigner of the crone. Another crone.
Golden Knight.
Minion. School of Night. Who's this loser again?
I don't know. He's a new kindred on the block.
Free from the stranglehold of gods and demons. Oh, is he the ultimate fedora tipper?
Yes.
Oh, this is the man who's like nothing is real.
His philosophy. Let me put it like this. So his philosophy is this: that he wants to save kindred society, to free it from the stranglehold of gods and demons, and fling open the doors to a new non-spiritual covenant. That you're not damned, but in fact superior to man, and created as glorious perfection of them. And he's likely to try to storm the gates of the Lancia Sanctum and then get fucking murdered.
Well, actually, he's almost like this type of psychopath probably wouldn't be out of place in a more crazy Order Dracul, though.
Exactly.
He's Order Dracul. Yeah. If the Order Dracul was here, he'd be that guy.
Mm-hmm.
That he would.
Oh, here we go. School of the Night. They actually explain it. Who are even they? They're plotting to overthrow God and Queen, who are even more licentiously corrupting youths away. The only honest men in England, devoted to uncovering the deepest truth about human and kindred natures and sharing them. School of Night at Study. So basically, they're just a bunch of super hipster philosophers.
Yes.
Before those kind of 100 or 2 years before those kind of people started making big decisions that changed the world.
Oh no, this man's going to try to change the world by bombing Parliament.
Also, these are the two people. Actually, the two agents I think are most interesting. Maul, the crazy old lady that works for the Living Gallows, who wrote a biography about herself.
Yeah.
Finley, disguised gossip, and also a vicious highwayman, who has killed quite a few people.
Oh yeah, I mean,
then there's Cecil.
Who no one knows.
Cecil is a ghost story. And I was Spectre seen in the tower when Plague's about to come around. If she sees you, you get the plague.
Because she likely, because I know Chronicles has still has flaws like plague blood, where you just, when you bite people, you spread plague.
That's actually a bloodline specifically that can do that directly, which is kind of neat. I don't think they get mentioned. I think they are in here.
Maybe.
Or are they not? I don't think they are in this one.
So playing the game, they talk about Elizabethan London in general.
Yeah, and a few scene examples. Then Marlowe.
It stinks in summer.
A lot of these are just
details to keep in mind. Yeah,
are just plot ideas, really.
Which, hey, that's fair. Not everything needs to have developed strong plots, although it does help sometimes.
Yeah. Then we get into the next bit,
Marlowe,
which is
the basic concept.
Yeah. Then we get into eventually the on page 280 we get to what's kind of
Queen. Church
279,
Divided, which is a fun Lengthy Sanctum concept.
Yeah. And
Time Traveler's Guide to Elizabethan England by Ian Mortar.
We'll get to that in a second.
Inspiration. I was saying that's apparently.
Yeah,
the Chronicles of Darkness. I made a mistake. It was 279 that I was looking at. So the mention that they have about what's going on as well here is quite neat, honestly. London's spiritual landscape is a godsend for werewolves. Now that they've kind of managed to tame the pure problem down a little bit, they're starting to move in, and there's 3 very big packs that are in London right now. And
they're finally
spirits.
starting to take at the ghosts.
Yeah.
So I was 100% right. The Tower of London is fucking haunted as hell.
Oh yeah, it's an open wound leading into the shadow.
Yeah.
And on top of that, because their bloodline almost completely died out because of their horrible genocide civil war, quite a few wolf-blooded are actually entering the pack too. Just to kind of make up for the amount of dead werewolves. The mummies, however, not really a big thing here.
Yeah.
There's a couple of cults working within the Catholic Church. That's literally about it.
Yeah.
The mages are going underground.
Yeah.
The Prometheans, there's some that live within London's limit, but most of the time, yeah.
I like how they say that that Sheepside is almost like a wasteland itself.
Basically, they found the equivalent of Whitechapel, and they're like, "Hey, if we think about it, it's so bad here that no one's gonna notice what's wrong."
And it's true.
It's literally so bad a wasteland refuses to form.
Well, no, it does, but the place was so bad beforehand, no one notices.
No, it says, like, having found an area in Cheapside where the wasteland apparently refuses to form, they viciously defend it with their scrap of paradise in Cheapside.
God.
It's just so terrible that the wastelands can't form because I can't make it worse.
Which means it's the Prometheans' holy land. Also, the Hunters are roundabout.
Does that mean Detroit is currently their holy land?
No, because Detroit probably is a wasteland. There's probably some Prometheans that's been living there the last half decade. Half century that's ruined it. But the case of the Hunters of London is actually kind of interesting in that they're quite active. And they're about to head to the New World, which is a tag into the next book, actually, to some degree, and also a later bit in this book as well.
Yeah, so that's basically what Hunters deal with.
Also, something apparently fucking weird is happening with the ghosts, so much so that the seniors literally have no clue what's going on.
There's something killing and eating them.
Yeah.
And then they risen, and then the demons.
Oh, I'm mentally challenged. I thought the Awakened were mummies.
No, that's the Arisen.
I'm sorry.
The Awakened
they don't really have any. Well, you're kind of right. Their cults aren't really here.
Yeah, they're not relevant at all.
Yeah.
There's like maybe one here. There might be like one here kept like a burgeoning merchant who bought the fucking thing. That's like it says.
A mummy that got shipped here by their cult at some point.
So yeah, the machine though is in massive detail here.
Yeah, they go like, yeah, you want to add some stuff that's happening in the New World during all this shit, because we just remember the last 2 sections involved demons. They're probably giving you an idea of something that's happening concurrently in the time period that
London,
those covered.
Because of its sprawl, it is perfect baseline material for the machine to work with, and it has a big fucking project going.
Mm-hmm. And that's why a lot of demons are running to America.
No, they're not running to America. They're also seeking to destroy the infrastructure before this plan pulls off.
I know. Listen, but like the Harbinger comes to America.
I mean, there's still demons there, but yeah, more from Europe are fleeing too. And there are quite a few. And I like the nod to the Aztec. Yeah, there's a ton of New World infrastructure too.
Yeah,
I love that.
Mm-hmm.
Then we get into the inspiration for the books, which is, of course, all the very good A Time Traveler's Guide to Elizabethan England, Elizabeth and Elizabeth the Golden Age, which are not exactly super historical dramas, but they get the drama. They get the drama and the age and the sort of the feeling of the age correctly. It's not necessarily completely historically accurate, but
it's like that cringe modern Romeo and Juliet where it's let's draw our swords and they pull out pistols.
No, not at all actually. Also, that was less cringe than you think because they were both rapiers, rapier and 9mm, which I thought was actually kind of clever.
Fuck off. That's the film that made me That's the film that made me fucking despise Romeo and Juliet.
Shakespeare in Love. It's
of course.
That's another thing they do. Because it's supposed to capture the feel of the middle class at this time period.
There's more.
Yeah.
No, that's it. The Rose Courts.
And then Shakespeare at Love, of course, but you know.
Fuck, there's more.
Yes, this is very. As I mentioned, this was also they had to shoe in Changeling.
Yeah, how about since it's 2 hours? No.
Okay.
Let's literally just like go to the bottom and just see if there was anything worth. Because it's actually really short. Oh, that's it? Okay.
Okay, well, actually, we'll call it here. No, it's not super, but we can cover it to some degree in the next one. The basics, though, is that there's a bunch of different court things. This is related to Changeling 2E, where you can make new courts, and it's kind of neat.
It's neat.
That's about it.
We might go into a bit more detail. I'm sorry. It's 2 hours, man.
Yeah.
I thought it was just going to be vampire. I didn't expect this.
Yeah. It does have some fun art in this section, though.
I think I spoiled a little bit, but yeah. We're going to call it here because it's been 2 hours.
Yeah.
So, would it be fair to actually rate this book right now?
Well, let's rate the vampire section. Why don't we rate the vampire section?
We can rate these separately because they really are kind of like a section and then something kind of tacked on.
Yeah, so there's 2 sections. So,
one's a bit more medieval.
I'd say this one's good, like middle tier good.
I'd say it's a bit more than middle tier good, but yeah, good.
Like just genuinely good. It has some very clever details, and it is well tuned. They do a decent job at giving you ideas for play. It doesn't shoehorn you in. It gives you a lot of details to work with. It's not like who's the strongest.
The fluff characters don't make me want to gouge my eyes out.
The only knock I'll give is don't pair Welsh with Anglo-Saxon. It's cringe.
Yeah, but that's just like one guy's name.
No, it's 2.
Yeah.
Okay, two guys' names, but like, yeah, like I meant like the characters as like people to use in your game.
What they do.
Use in the history, yeah.
Actually, I'm gonna rate it up above because I really like dealing with sectarian woes. There's a reason why a lot of my favorite. I'm a big fan of alternate history, and there's a reason a lot of my favorite takes place during the time of the Reformation.
Mm-hmm.
Because there's a lot of twists and turns you can do. And in fact, actually, one of my favorite stories is Now Blooms the Tudor Rose, which deals with the concept of Anne Boleyn. Instead of it being Elizabeth, it's actually a son. Like same Same egg, same pregnancy. It's just Henry shot a Y chromosome.
Also, I'm just gonna say this here. I think I also would rate this a bit higher, but also not just because it's a good setting book, but because it gives good ideas and things that can be reused for other games and stuff like that. Say, for instance,
I'd say straight to high good.
Yeah.
The setting to me isn't as kind of weirdly interesting as like the Aztec one, which kind of goes through town to town. I mean, it's mostly just Tenochtitlan and like the surrounding.
Yeah.
I think maybe that this book is probably better for other people.
Yeah, people who really like Vampire are really going to like this.
And I do. I genuinely had a blast, especially because it out of the Vampire Covenants, I think the one I've always kind of liked, found the most interesting besides Order Dracul was Lanctia Sanctum. So it's kind of neat that they get such. I mean, it makes sense they have such a big piece of the pie. It's the right setting time for it. But I love how they interact with that, and I really also. You're right in that having the Invictus play the Shadow Brokers because they're not the big banana in charge. That's well done. Very clever.
It's also a different look at them, which I think is really what is
too many people
one of the
play
best
them as
things
Mafia.
to see.
These guys know they're your spy weavers. They're your
they play them as Camarilla.
Elusive shadows.
Or they play him as just like the Camarilla with the numbers filed off, which, yes, the Invictus can be that and kind of are that, but they're so much more, really. I really enjoy the Invictus, I think, the most of a lot of the Covenants because they don't just fit that one mold.
I'll say that this book, it started at kind of a disadvantageous position for me. Because I've seen English Vampire, and Vampire's fun. But Vampire gets a lot of work.
Right.
So I entered in this with a little bit lower. Also, I'll be honest. This was always kind of lower on my list compared to a couple of the other pieces on here. In fact, actually, after the Changeling, there's a setting that I find to be
I'm gonna love that.
Oh yeah, the next setting,
and it's
change
right
is
after
fantastic.
two really good settings.
Wapan. We go to Wapan.
Yeah, but this is also like in between that and also two really good sections.
Yeah,
because Constantinople is great, and hands out my favorite. And the Aztec one is like my number 2 or number 3 because in retrospect, it is a little shakier in giving your players things to do. It does, however, give a wonderful job in describing the culture and kind of how you develop New World infrastructure.
And then there's like just some really just off the wall things you could probably port into anything.
Yeah, they're wall banger like the muggerfish.
The muggerfish.
Muggerfish, the entire town, an entire like lower Canadian town, getting transported to Mexico.
Yeah, and also
a retinue of Oda, Ashigaru, and samurai that got lost in a battle during the Sengoku Jidai just appear.
Yeah. Oh, and then don't forget my personal favorite, the boat made of spiders.
The boat made of spiders. So
yeah,
it's kind of in between that. I think this one's kind of the more. It's back to simpler and easier form.
Yeah,
and I think it was a good idea to do that.
But in a way, also remember, sometimes simpler and easier can be better than putting in a lot of flesh and details for stories.
Yeah, this hand holds like a plot line you can throw your characters into of like, oh, here's what would canonically happen, but here's a bunch of things that could also happen.
Like we know canonically that Mr. Hill's attempt to forge the Camarilla with the other two princes that formerly ruled London fails. We know that. But we don't have to take
not have your players do that? Why not have your players be the ones that try to refill it? Or that they believe in Mr. Hill and they say, hey, yeah, we'll help him.
And it gives things to do for all of the major covenants. Even the Gallows gets a little things to play with.
Or say, like what if you guys, you got your players going to Gallons, you want to keep the Gallons, you got the Gallows relevant, so it's essentially your players' task to keep your organization relevant through all the changes going on.
Which, let's face it,
the more I'm talking about what we read, the more I'm kind of warming up to it a bit.
Yeah, see, I mean, that's why I say this was I like this one the surprising amount. I didn't have high hopes. I didn't have low hopes for it. I just didn't know what to expect.
I expected it just to be middling to low, standard good. Like
it really is. To me, it's just good. I've read better Vampire, but
this is what Viking Werewolf should have been.
Yeah, that's actually a good way to put it. This is what Viking Werewolf should have been. Like, I've seen better vampire books.
Yes, it takes specifically in place in 1587 and 1593. Those are the 2 big years they put the most effort into.
Which makes sense, because those are actually kind of important years.
But they flesh out enough. But they flesh out enough.
Both before, a bit before, if you really like, if you want to have it take place during Henry VIII's time, they do that a little bit. But more importantly, Mary too. But most importantly, it covers all of Elizabeth's reign and actually up to James II getting kicked out by William of Orange.
Yeah.
Actually, no, they go up to the failed revolution.
Bonnie Charles.
Yeah. That's when they end the timeline.
Which, hey, that's good. This is what the Viking.
That's a long stretch. It's also a long stretch of time, which is perfect for a vampire game.
Oh yeah.
So, I think that's one of the things that makes this setting work is that
candidate. And I think I've only have I given a decent at all? I think the closest was to the strongest, and that was just because of how they took the concept and really fucked it up.
I don't think even you gave that one a decent.
Yeah, I think it's just what they worked with. It's just what they could work with versus what they did. So yeah, Dark Heroes, I would say, is worth it. We've covered a good chunk of it, and
we're about halfway through the book. This is a very, very long and chunky book, and there's a reason why when it was kickstarted, people were really throwing money at it to the point where they've released 2 others, a companion book to this one and a Dark Heroes 2. I think 2 is a bit weaker, but I do like some of the settings in 2 quite a bit.
Also, quick question from the person who probably knows this most, Tech. Correct me if I'm wrong, but in case can't tell if any of our viewers are interested in purchasing these things. Correct me if I'm wrong, but they can buy these time things specifically, or do they have to buy them all as a whole?
You can buy on White Wolf's Drive-Thru RPG page. If you're looking at under the Chronicles of Darkness, like the Dark Heroes settings, you can just buy a section of this book if you're interested in it for cheaper.
And really just don't want...
In every one of these streams, I made a point to. Sorry, Greg. I made a point to link it to the main book. But this is the beautiful thing about Dark Heroes. Each one of the books we covered, Shattered World, To the Strongest, Requiem of Regina, and the Changeling Half, the Wolf and the Raven,
all of it,
Skinwalker and Demon Aztec setting, Fall Constantinople. You could just buy the ones you like.
Yeah, which is a good way to do something like this. It's nice and it's convenient. Because I know that there's plenty of people who will buy this, and if they're big vampire players, they only want like 1 or 2 3 sections of this book. Like, that's it. Like, it's a vampire for Elizabethan era. Yay! And they'll just grab that.
And this is a genuinely, if you like to collect vampire, it's not the best. I do have to, one of these days, I will be ambushed by Techpriest in the night.
We will have to do Requiem for Rome. Requiem for Rome is possibly the best setting book ever created.
He will surround me with black owls with golden eyes, and I can't escape, and we'll have to read through Requiem. That will happen. Probably after we go through more of probably all of Dark Heroes?
All of Dark Heroes. Because really, Requiem for Rome is what sets up Dark Heroes to even have a hint of success. Because it's one of the few, if only, books that actually is a historical setting book for Chronicles back in the day. The only ones that I can think of off the top of my head that aren't that are Mage Noir and Victorian Lost, which is the Changeling in Victorian times.
And before we go, I will link in the chat our Discord. The invite link will work for a few days. And if YouTube dislikes it, do not worry. I will also make sure to edit the description so it'll be there. It'll be good for another week until either we stream again or something comes up and we just stream the next week. It happens sometimes. As for our next book, we might... I think it'd be a good idea just to plow through Changeling and then something really stupid like motherfucking Dracula.
We'll just do that.
Because Changeling is short, and then we just throw in motherfucking Dracula.
Yeah. I don't know when we're gonna go back to BattleTech because, current events and.
Well, also, I was going to say, even the people who liked it were starting to get burned out. Let's be honest.
Yeah.
Yeah, it's fair.
It's a lot of information, and as I said, the Liao book is
I don't blame
hard.
House Liao for you guys getting kind of like your head exploding. It was very much, and then this war happened.
And this war happened, then this war, and then all that. Like, right now, with how the world is, a bit of escapism from things is kind of a good thing to have.
That is why, after we finish this book in Dracula, I'm busting out something that I've been holding on to for a while.
Oh, what is it?
Cadillacs and fucking dinosaurs.
Oh, we're going for Cadillacs and dinosaurs?
Because of Clown World being Clown World, I think Cadillacs and dinosaurs should be the thing we cover after we finish Requiem for Regina next week. Well, actually, it's not Requiem for Regina. It's the Rose Quartz of London. Let's be fair.
Which is very short. It's still interesting enough that I think it was included in this book.
Enough. I complained, but that's because I knew we were running low on time.
Mm-hmm.
And we had that much more to go.
Yeah. So yes, next week,
Rose Court and Dracula, motherfucking Dracula.
Count motherfucking Dracula. You got to put the count in there.
And then after that, Cadillacs and dinosaurs.
All right. So ratings then. Good from me. I'd
Solid
say that good. Yeah.
Good.
Solid to high good. Not amazing.
Yeah, like I said, high good, but essentially good. So essentially, we're all unanimous in the fact that this is good.
It's good. True. Like if you're interested, pick it up. Like that's basically what I recommend for Dark Heroes as a whole. Just if you're interested, buy it.
Like Vampire,
just more to a degree. Just more to a degree than some other things we would have recommended.
Yeah. You get a lot of value out of Dark Heroes. Mm-hmm. You really do.
Especially since, let's be honest, the majority of the White Wolf players are still Vampire players.
Yeah, that's fair.